This is just a prototype, what is currently tentatively titled Papergate, a two-player tactics area control game. You are rival newspapers. These cubes are respective reporters. These are neutral agents that are getting in the way, that don't want the stories to be reported. The closer you get to the middle, the more agents there are. And this guy in the center here, he's the president, and each of these has a specific level of influence that they have on these individual sources that you see here on the board. There's 7 sources in total. You have a hand of cards to start off with. These are multi-purpose cards. The thing that you're paying attention to when they're in your hand is the dollar amount that you have as funding on a single turn, or the special action that you can do on your turn when you play the card. The way you play is on your turn you will play one of these cards, and so say I have $5 on my turn. I'm trying to move my reporters around or to get unassigned reporters onto the board. If I move reporters, I can spend $1 to move a reporter one space to an adjacent space, and I can keep on doing that as much as I like with any mix of reporters here. I can also spend money to move agents around, basically bribing them to get in the way of someone else's story. The ultimate goal of moving all these dudes around is that I want to actually file the stories that are on the table here in the display. When things are on the table, the only thing you're really paying attention to are these individual source icons and the point values. And you have to have a majority of reporters on a source in order to have control over it. And you have to have control over the combination of sources that are on a story here on the table in order to actually file it. A majority is essentially having more reporters on that source than your opponent's reporters, and also more reporters than the agents that are on that source. So you basically have to have more influence than both of these two entities, the opposing player and the agents who are trying to get in the way. The tricky thing about the president here is that the president counts as 4 influence on his own. He still moves individually, just like an agent. You can spend $1 to move the president around, but it's a big roadblock in the path to getting majorities onto that particular source. Now, as I said, there are special actions that you can do on a card instead if you don't want to use the money that is on this card. You can instead do a special action. So in this case, it would be distract the agents, which would mean that you move all agents from one source to the source that's noted here. So you could take like all of these 3 agents and move them all over to this source if you wanted to. I want to pursue this story. I want to file a story. Area Ninja just wants someone to notice him. And what that requires is I have to have majority on DNA evidence, filmed evidence, and anonymous source. If I do that, I get 5 points. Let's see. I can spend $5 to do that right now. So let's just do that here. I'm doing this one-handed. So let's just say I spent this. I have $5, and I'm going to use that to move dudes around. Let's see here. I can move this over here. So that's $1. So that gives me a majority on that source. I need a majority on filmed evidence. The problem is that just moving this guy over matches the agents. I need to exceed that, so I'm going to spend another $1 to do that over there. So cool, now I have a majority on that. I've spent $3 so far, and I still need a majority on this source in order to file that story that I really want. I can spend the last of my $2 to hire reporters from my unassigned pool. So I take those last 2 reporters and place them onto this source. The restriction on hiring is that they have to go onto the source that's noted on the card. They can't be hired any old place. They have to actually be hired onto that particular source. So with that, I now have majorities in the sources that are required for this story. So I can take it, and it goes into my personal tableau over here, and from now on, I win ties on this particular source. That source would be over here. So because of that, from now on, even though I have exactly the same number of reporters as my opponent here, I actually am in control of that source, and that can feed into any other stories that require that source, like this one or this one. The last step of filing a story is that you have to remove reporters from each of the sources that you use to file it. So I have to remove a reporter from this one, and from this one. And these reporters go back to my unassigned pool, except for one, any one of my choice. One of them has to be retired and is removed from the game completely. Once a story has been taken from the middle of the table here in the display, a new one comes out, and so my opponent would take their turn next. The ultimate end game of all of this is the first player to have 5 stories reported triggers the end game. Their opponent gets one last turn to do whatever they can, and whoever has the most points wins. So that is an overview of Papergate. I hope you dig it. I hope that all of that made sense. Thanks very much. Bye!